councillors here. We'll have a minute's silence first, and then we'll sit down, and then Tony Adams will just say a few words about Tom, who was a past councillor and chairman for one of the housing boards. So a minute's silence, please.
Yeah, I knew Tom very well because we were fellow district councillors together, and also Tom for a long time, like myself, was on Helston Parish Council. Tom, I would say, was quite a colourful character, quite calm until somebody upset him, and it was like a bottle of pop going off, with the sort of thing going off at all angles. But he was hardworking. He stood initially as a Conservative, never was, but then stood as a Liberal Democrat candidate for a couple of elections, and then came back to being a Conservative again. I think it was because he fell out with the Conservative administration at the time, but his heart was always a Conservative. Jolly hard-working. He represented Helston North West for a considerable amount of time. I had a great deal of time for Tom, and also knew his wife, who died many years ago. So yes, all in all, I think it's right that we should remember Tom, because he was one of the good guys. Thank you, Chairman.
That's probably best my microphone was off for that. Right, okay. Receive declarations of interest, please, on anything on the agenda tonight. Oh, excellent. Yeah, thanks, Vice Chairman. I'll just ask the Vice Chairman to read out the fire instructions.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Your safety and well-being is important to us, so please listen carefully to this announcement. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the fire alarm sounds, we will evacuate the building. And mine isn't on either. You're not listening to me. Two fire exits from the room through the double doors where you came in, and these are behind you at the back of the room. Please note that you should not use the lift. And the other is at the side. Please note that you should not use the lift in the event of the fire. The other fire exit is through the door on the left, which leads to the external fire escape. Please take a moment now to look. Find your nearest exit. We'll meet to the left of the driveway at the main entrance to Thorpe Lodge. Thank you. And thank you for finding me a microphone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. I've received apologies from the following councillors: Councillor Gurney, Harrison, Hempsall, Lawn, Mackey, Moncur, Murrell, Peck, Roper, J. Thomas, K. Vincent, and Mr. Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others to add to that? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, if we can move on to the minutes, and we've got minutes of two meetings, the 12th of May and the 26th of May. The 12th of May are pages 7 to 16. And the, do we have any, can we approve those first as being correct? Show of hands. Thank you. And minutes of the 26th of May, pages 16 to 26. Can we have a show of hands again? Thank you. Okay. Any matters arising? Thank you. Okay. Receive announcements from myself first, which is some engagements on page 27, which I would like to thank my vice chairman for taking care of many of those while I was on holiday for a couple of weeks. But other things, I just need to mention the fact that my charity for the year will be Nelson's Journey, and I've picked them because they are based in Broadland, and I think we need to, I'd like to try to keep everything linked in some way to Broadland. They were also actually one of the charities I visited as vice chairman, and I was impressed with the work they do with youngsters who've been unfortunate enough to lose a parent. So on those two reasons, I've chosen them for my charity. Obviously, there will be a donation page opened later in the year, and there'll be a couple of events, hopefully, to raise money specifically for the charity. Vice Chairman, anything to say?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Leader.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to pick up and share with Council the peer review that we went through. And I'd just like to say thank you to the peer review team. Ian Hudspeth, Yvonne Reeves, Dan Gascoigne, Trevor Collier, David Shepherd and Kirsty Human, who you all had the opportunity and hopefully many of you met. The review itself considered the core components looked at by all corporate peer challenges, and those are namely local priorities and outcomes, organisational and place leadership, governance and culture, finance, planning and management, capacity for improvement. We also asked them to consider an additional area, which was the joint partnership between South Norfolk and ourselves. Although we don't as yet receive, or we haven't as yet received their report, we all had the opportunity to receive their initial thoughts in the presentation that the team did on the last day they were with us. And I'd just like to pull out a couple of quotes that they had. One was, I only have good things to say about Broadland and South Norfolk Council. And the other one was a bit of a quirky one. If you're not in the room, you're not in the loop. So what they did was identified a few strengths and areas for our consideration. They were impressed with the collaboration and what it achieved so far and its direction of travel, although they did want us to check timescales and deliverables to make sure they were realistic, ensuring that our ambitions are tempered by the way our capacity to deliver. They also said that they saw that we had a huge ambition for place, positively working with partners to deliver economic growth. We were a partner of choice. Both councils were considered place leaders across the Greater Norwich area, and our help hub really impressed them. As they leading by example with the strategic working to improve operational service delivery across multi-agency organisations for the benefit of residents. They also stated that we're in a healthy financial position with manageable budget gaps, generating healthy levels of commercial income and reasonable levels of reserves, although they did note that significant proportions were already committed to future funding of capital programs. The team also gave us areas to work on, and I'd just like to touch on two of those at this particular point in time. One was to deal with the addressing poor member behaviour. It was a bit disappointing that this one came up. I'd just like to perhaps highlight for members that it is in the Code of Conduct. Part 5, Section 3 is the key area. So going forward, I'm going to ask and expect all chairmen of committees to raise any poor behaviour in meetings there and then with the individual concerned. Now, that may be embarrassing, but it needs to be done because we need to change the behaviour. I also expect any member that is challenged by a chairman to apologise for their inappropriate behaviour. The other one I wanted to pick up was around the streamlining of process and procedures around governance. And they asked us to look at the panels and policy committees, also about improving the scrutiny function, which would help us to improve officer capacity, resilience, and accountability. And just so that you know what the next steps are in relation to the peer review, the report is due next month, so hopefully we get that in the next couple of weeks. We will then build an action plan linked to the things that are in that report. And from there, we will then have, in 6 months' time, a review of the schedule, and the team will come back and have a look and see how we've got on, effectively mark our homework. So thank you for that, Chairman.
Thank you. Members of the Cabinet, I have on my left Fan and Judy who want to speak. I'll take Fan first.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to congratulate the housing team, particularly the Russ Sleeper team, for the incredible work they did over the last week. When some of you may or may not know, we had some people turn up and pitch their tent on our lawn, quite literally. So the team sort of basically did what they do best, really, is they turned a difficult situation into a positive situation and supported the people there to get into appropriate accommodation, worked with our partners, and part of this was part of Project Adder as well, which is helping people with drug and alcohol difficulties. So we've got them accommodated. This is much about a prevention agenda and treatment rather than enforcement. That's what Adder is. Okay, so I was just really pleased to see the whole ethos of Broadland District Council about putting residents first and their needs first. So thank you very much to the housing team and Russ Sleeper teams particularly. So thank you.
Judy.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say a couple of things. Firstly, about the Broadland litter pick, which is probably the first time we've run it in this format. It ended on the 30th of June, but because we had less than 21 entries, all those community groups that entered will actually get the prize of £200. I would then like to remind you all about the food waste collection. And this will start from Monday, the 3rd of October. Food waste will be collected throughout the district. There'll be publicity towards the end of August, and the delivery of caddies and information to households will commence on the 5th of September. So exciting times. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy and John.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say the statistics have come out nationally for the collection of business rates and council tax. There are more than 300 districts, and we have come 5th and 8th respectively in those tables. So I want to thank the team. It just shows how they actually do work with residents and businesses to really get the council tax in or the business rates, but they do help them and handhold them. So I just want to thank the team. Thank you.
John?
Just to say, as part of our forward plan of our accommodation move, we have now started to proceed to market this site. Hopefully we'll be able to see how that goes onto with local businesses and whoever might want to see how that goes. But any decisions will come back to full council for a decision after that.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members of the public? That are none, and public speaking that are none. So moving on to item 8 on the agenda, overview and scrutiny committee, to receive the minutes of the meeting on the 7th of June.
Thank you, Chair. As Vice Chair, I would move that the minutes be noted, Chair, and all matters resolved for the 7th, 28th and 12th July.
Chairman, nobody moved because nobody heard you at the back.
That's okay. Can you hear me at the back?
Yeah,
Lovely, thank you, Chair. Okay. First meeting, the chairman's microphone doesn't work, but okay. Moving on to cabinet of the 14th of June, minutes on page 51. Can I ask the leader to propose them?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd ask Council to receive the minutes of the 14th of June. There's one item in those minutes that needs to come before Council, and I'd ask the portfolio holder for finance to introduce that.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like Council to agree to the slippage requests for the capital as detailed in paragraph 3.16 of the Cabinet papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second that. Thank you.
Those in favour? Any comments? No? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
Okay, that then moves us on to, I'd ask Council to receive the minutes of the 19th of July. Again, there are a few items there to deal with. First one of those is item number 12, City Deal borrowing and the establishment of the Greater Norwich Strategic Infrastructure Fund. The recommendation is at page 59, and I'd just like to recommend that to Council.
I think the actual minutes are starting on page 97, and the actual minutes of that start on, and the recommendation of the minutes is actually on page 98 of the papers. Thank you. Do you have comments? Give a show of hands, please. Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. That moves on then to item number 10.2, which is the enforcement policy. And I'd ask the portfolio holder to introduce that one, please.
Thank you. I would ask that Council agrees the adoption of the proposed overarching enforcement policy, which the recommendation, I believe, is on page 60 of our papers tonight. Thank you.
I'll second that, Chair.
And so the full paper is on page 99. Any comments? Can we have a show of hands, please? Oh, carried. Thank you.
Thank you. That moves on then to item 10.3, which is the economic growth strategic plan, which I would ask the portfolio holder to present.
Thank you. I would like to propose to Council that they approve and adopt the Economic Growth Strategic Plan. The summary document is attached on page 63. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to second that. I think it's an excellent report that will help all residents and businesses in Broadland.
Thank you.
Thanks. With the economic growth and strategic plan, I'm concerned in its current form, it doesn't significantly or sufficiently address climate smart issues. It doesn't even acknowledge or value it. Although I do acknowledge that it's got a clean and inclusive growth section, which is all about net zero carbon and helping businesses achieve that. But that's not the same as about being climate smart. And I would like to see that actually, given the context we're in with some of the highest temperatures and fires and kind of other kind of issues that can affect businesses going forward, I would like to see this actually reviewed in light of sort of being more climate smart and actually have an additional objective, which is about kind of helping businesses to build climate resilient businesses in Broadland. Because I think they do need support, and I think we kind of need to acknowledge the sort of environmental context that we're in, and review this plan in light of kind of climate smart issues around water quality, water availability, fire risk, biodiversity reduction, and just the extreme weather events that we are going to be facing that will increase intensity and frequency. So my recommendation, my amendment would be to see this reviewed again and add that extra objective, because I think although it's only a 5-year plan, we've got to start building climate resilience in our businesses now. It's not, 5 years' time is too late. So I would like to see, that, and zero net is not the same as being climate smart. And if we're likely to actually increase our carbon and not achieve zero net if we don't help our businesses be sufficiently climate resilient.
If you want to second that, and then we can, if you propose that as an amendment. Is that second by Stuart? Okay. Do you want me to speak now or want to speak later?
Reserve right to speak.
Okay. Councillor Coppers needs to respond to that, and then I'll take Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence, for explaining climate smart. I just want to point out that the economic growth plan needs to be in place for our forthcoming submission to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, of which Broadland has been allocated 1.3 million. I want to assure you that we'll take your comments on board. This is an organic document that will be able to be changed throughout the term 2022 to 2027, and we're happy to hear your comments. And I note what you've said about water, fire and climate change, but I just need to repeat the need to approve the plan in its current form to be able to access the UK Shared Prosperity funding, which with the deadline being the 1st of August. Thank you.
Want to move forward with the proposal, or if you're happy with that response, if you want to move forward with the recommendation, could you just clarify exactly what you're proposing?
Yeah, sure. I value that, and I appreciate that. Therefore, to kind of work with the deadline that you've got, can we at least put in the amendment kind of to add build climate resilient businesses as part of one of those objectives? And that allows us that option later to develop that and explore that going forward, and allows you, with that very small amendment, will allow you going forward to allow us going forward to kind of revise it as you've described.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to accept a late amendment at this juncture because of the urgency of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund bid. So I would decline that. Thank you.
Is it possible to accept the principle in principle, accept and have it minuted as such, so that going forward, when you revise it, that climate smart is considered? Because at the moment, I've just said it's, I don't understand quite why a document cannot be revised by the 1st of August, because we've got enough time. But if you tell me it can't, my question is, can we at least acknowledge and have that in principle accepted and minuted?
I would say that the economic strategic plan needs to be ratified by council tonight in its present form, so that the UK Shared Prosperity Fund the bid can be submitted by close of business tomorrow. So I'm not happy to take an amendment at this late stage, but I am happy to pick this up with you next week and talk about this, because this is obviously, as I've said, an organic document, which the term is 5 years, and we're very happy to work with you on our climate change priorities.
So does that mean we're accepting the principle in rather than the amendment? I get it. You're saying no to the amendment, but
Can I suggest that we take your comments on board? As Councillor Coppelson has said, this is an organic document. It will be regularly checked, and look, we will minute tonight your concerns, and if we can move on from that, that would be helpful.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Councillor Davies.
Thank you very much. I'd certainly echo the comments of Councillor Lawrence, and as those on the Economic Success Policy panel know, I've raised these issues previously as far as the Economic Growth Strategic Plan is concerned. It's very much last century Economic Growth Strategic Plan. We really need to look at the future, and this plan doesn't really take into account those issues that have already been raised as far as climate change is concerned. I think we've all seen the consequences of climate change, what that might mean for us in Norfolk. And there are things that can be included in this economic, I would like to call it, development plan, and would like to see further development. I'd like to point out that the government have been challenged on their net zero strategy, a legal challenge to the net zero strategy, which was upheld. It was successful. That challenge was related to the fact that there's a lot of rhetoric around climate action, but it's not followed with the action. I appreciate it's a strategic plan, but we really do need to build in actions that mirror the rhetoric. And so I would very much like to support the idea of further developing this plan. I appreciate there is funding available, but there are simple things that can be done that can benefit businesses in Broadland. As I said previously, when it came to the business builder, which is coming up later, by working with small, medium-sized businesses and startups on climate resilience, we can help them to survive the coming consequences of climate change. And not only that, help in terms of energy saving and everything else that goes along with that. So I think there's some very positive things that we can work together on to put into action the rhetoric. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Catchpole, and then I've got the leader.
Thank you, Chair. I've just been looking through the document and it doesn't seem to suggest when a review will take place. Could somebody tell me when that will be and why it doesn't need to be built into the document? Thanks.
Is Councillor Coppelson want to respond to that?
The document that's attached on page 63 is just the summary of the main document. the main document, so that's the public facing document that's here tonight. The main document has far more detail in it, and I think you've sat on the Economic Success Panel and seen the development of the main document. In that main document, it talks about the KPIs, and we're looking to review those every 6 months. So that was discussed at Economic Success Panel on the last 2 occasions the panel has met.
Can I come back on that? Thank you, Councillor Cobblestone, but I do think there were issues raised at the Economic Success Panel, and if the KPIs haven't been set with the climate resilience in mind, then they're not going to exist within that plan. So do we know if there are any climate related KPIs? And if not, how do we get them built into that plan in the next few months, not in the after the 5 years?
Do you want me to come back? I think I'll just repeat what I said earlier. This is an organic document. It is, we are able to change it during the 5 years because everything will evolve. I mean, we've just had COVID and we've made quite a few sharp changes to the way we operate. So again, we are being fairly reactive in our changes to the changing climate. And I would say that if there are any concerns, if you would like to write to me, and we will put that forward at the Economic Success Development Panel, and I'm sure the chair is here this evening, he can work with me on that, and we will get chapters rewritten and strengthened to reflect the climate concerns that have been raised this evening.
Thank you, Chairman. It's disappointed to hear that if these concerns were raised that the Economic Success Panel, they haven't been followed through within the documents that exist. As has been said, the focus of this document is around economic growth, while we have to accept that's in the current climate and the issues that are dealing with there. What I would remind Council is the major actions and implementation that we're talking about links to the environmental strategy with the delivery of many of the climate aspects in there, and the environmental strategy is currently going through its review and expected to be at the Environmental Excellence Panel, I believe, at their next meeting, if not the one after. So there will be opportunity for councillors to input at that point in time around the development of that particular strategy and the actions coming out of it. So if we can include those in there, that would make more sense to me. But I do appreciate that there may be some strengthening of words that can be used within the summary document once it gets reviewed in 6 months' time. So that's where I am with it.
Okay, thank you. Can we, if we have no more comments, can I suggest we take the vote on that and approve that? Show of hands, please. Okay, thank you. Right, moving on, item 11, Planning Committee of the 18th of May, 15th of June and the 13th of July. I believe the chairman and the vice chairman are both absent tonight.
Excuse me, do we need to deal with the amendment that was raised?
No, because we agreed that we would minute it and then, yeah.
Thank you, sorry.
That's okay. Right. With the absence of the planning chairman and vice chairman, can I ask Councillor Folger, who is at the meetings, to move the minutes of those meetings, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as you have announced, there are three meetings which were held on the 18th of May, 15th of June and 13th of July, and I can report that all matters were resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I refer Council to page 81, where there's 3 applications which are linked applications in my ward. You will see from the papers here that all 3 were deferred, and that the reason for the deferring was that this council did not notify all the objectors and supporters and anybody else who contacted the council on this matter that this was happening, and therefore it was a failure of this council that which caused the deferment. Now, was this because there was a lack of staff, IT, or other issues that caused the council to foul up?
Thank you. Can I suggest that council is taken away and we will get a response to that?
I'll be very pleased to receive the response, Chairman, because it's not good enough that the council doesn't actually abide by the rules and regulations. And can I say, it implies that the applicant deferred this, whereas it was actually the council.
Okay, thank you. We'll get back to you with a response. That takes us on to the licensing committee. Can I ask Councillor King to move those minutes, please?
Thank you very much. I would like to ask for council to accept the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 25th of May 2022, and I can advise that all matters are resolved.
Thank you, Councillor King. Moving on to the report of the monitoring officer. Can I ask the leader to speak on this, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So the monitoring officer report starts at page 85 with the recommendations on page 90. I've had the opportunity now to review the allocation of responsibilities, and what I'm proposing is that the planning portfolio responsibilities are redistributed, with these moving to the newly named community housing and planning portfolio, which will be led by Councillor Wymark. This will reduce the number of portfolio holders from 7 to 6. With the changes, it is also therefore sensible to review the delegations for portfolio holders in the Constitution to ensure that the right and up-to-date delegations are aligned to the correct portfolio holders and respective senior officers. This will be undertaken in line with the service areas specified in Appendix A of the report, and I will work with the monitoring officer to complete. In order to align the policy development panels with the portfolio holders, the place shaping panel and the wellbeing panel will be replaced by one panel, the community housing and planning policy development panel, which will be chaired by Councillor Prutton, and the Vice Chair will be Councillor Ward. The number of members on the panels will remain the same, which is 11, and I will ask that the leaders of their respective groups make known their nominations to the monitoring officer on those particular, or on that one particular panel. The report also confirms the consequential changes to outside bodies due to the portfolio holder change, and they're outlined in section 2.7 of the report. As previously reported to Council, the Norfolk Rivers Internal Drainage Board has been reconstituted following a consultation. The members of the board are now reduced to 2, and these will be Councillor Brenner and Councillor Kelly. Finally, the substitute member for the Norfolk Planning Partnership evidently needs to be a cabinet member. So it's been necessary to replace Councillor Bullman and put in his place as the substitute Councillor Emsell. So I would ask Council to, or I'd recommend to Council the recommendations on page 90. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Laming. That, please. Thank you. Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wondered what the reasoning is behind making these changes.
Councillor Leader.
Thank you, Chairman. As I said, I reviewed the process and where we were, and it just makes sense to pull it together in this way at this point in time.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a few concerns about this, and I would just like to outline them. The first issue that I have really is that we seem to have planning problems. We've already had one identified tonight, and I do know that we've had issues at Parish Council where we've had planning applications which are not running out of time to be extended for Parish Council to look at them. So I'm a bit concerned that moving around the planning portfolio is not going to help those issues at all. So where we've had difficulties, and we've now had will have had four different arrangements for planning since 2019, it does seem, and the last one in fact was only 2 months ago, this doesn't really seem very stable or very useful for planning to redress some of the problems that they already have. My other concern is that we actually looked at this and we voted on it at the AGM, and it forms part of the minutes of this meeting, in fact. And if you look at item 2.1, when it talks about the committee structure, it does say that the leader of the Conservative Party he proposes to keep the current portfolio arrangements which were convened in May 2019. Now, that does seem to me that to change your mind on that in 2 months is somewhat rash, and would suggest that perhaps it hasn't necessarily been thought through. I worry too that we vote on things at an AGM that subsequently get changed. So it's a sort of feels a bit like making up the rules as you go along. So I don't think that's particularly helpful. My other slight concern is that it does suggest that the Constitution will be amended by the monitoring officer. I would have thought that for the Constitution to be amended for something so major, that really ought to be put in and agreed at full council also. So those are the comments and concerns I have. I don't know if other people feel much the same about those.
Would the leader like to respond to some of those queries?
Thank you, Chairman. As far as the planning and moving things forward, it makes sense that the planning function is more aligned to that of the housing and housing delivery, and hence that Councillor Wymark will be picking up those elements of the planning to drive those forward. The changes to the Constitution are those laid out in front of you in the recommendations, so they're quite clear what the monitoring officer is going to change. The only ones that we're asking around delegation is around then where the responsibilities lie within the functions and the delegations that we're checking within that. So that's where those things sit.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite bemused by this. There are two departments I would not want to merge together. It would be those two. This Department of Planning has not been without its problems at the council here, and also planning in general has gone through a huge overhaul of legislation with the white paper that came out during COVID. So there's lots happening. We don't really need to water it down by having someone trying to split responsibility that way. But also, on the other hand, we're going through a cost of living crisis. Well-being, mental health, and all of that is at paramount at the minute. You can't turn on the newspaper without seeing issues around that. And I just don't think it's something that should be merged like that. They're distinct departments and they deserve full attention and respect, not just slung together like that. And it's not any reflection of Sue, by the way, chairing. It's just, I just don't think it's right at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other comments? I've got Councillor Viley and then Councillor Davies and then Councillor Laming.
Chair. Yeah, I've got some comments on this. Clarification for yourself, Chair. When this goes to the vote, is it the intention to take this on block? Because I'd like to propose that we actually deal with, because if you look at 6.1 going away, 6, there's also the issue of outside appointments, Councillor Brett, and therefore I'd like to see that this is separated out, and therefore we take 6.1, 6.2, and then also the 6.5, the group leaders to confirm allocation of seats taken separately on a vote.
sorry, I mean, could you? I'm happy to split them up if councillors wish. Do you want to be? Because could you repeat exactly what your ones you'd like to take separately?
Yeah. What I'm proposing is that we take 6.3, the proposition to eliminate the planning portfolio holder, the merger of the committees, panels into one, and then obviously there's a consequence of that, which is the group leaders confirm the allocation of seats. So it's all the matters relating to this change on the portfolio holder, because the other matters within this are concerning with outside bodies, for instance, which is an entirely different item. Yeah.
6, 7, 6, 8, 6, 9 on block, and the separate vote on 6, 3 and 6, 5.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, 6.3 is the panels.
Can I just clarify that? Because Councillor Riley, you're talking about the planning portfolio holder, but 6.3 is a policy development panel recommendation. So I'm confused.
As well. Yeah.
That's
because it's a consequence. So the way I'm reading this
so
is
6.1 to 6.6 are all related and consequential.
Yes.
So you want 6.1 to 6.6 as a vote?
Yes, correct.
And then are you proposing 6.7, 6.8 and 6.9 as a second vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'd like to make comments about this. I'm really, really concerned about this in a number of ways. We know through the strategic review, which we went through at the previous ONS meeting and previous cabinet, that planning has red flags. We've got issues within the department in terms of delivery of planning, in terms of its timing on allocations. We've got 2 red flags there. The majors have got an amber, and to be doing this, to be eliminating the dedication of a portfolio holder, and also the place shaping panel, which primarily focuses on this, and it's not across different panels, would actually be a retrograde step for this council. And therefore, why? I'm also seriously concerned in terms of the reasoning that's been given with the timing. I hear the leader, and it's clearly the leader's proposition here. So I know it's not the monitoring officer's proposition, because that's not the way it works. But I'm also concerned at why the leader has said that, well, it's time to review this. 2 months ago, we had a new portfolio holder put in place by the leader. We also had that portfolio holder replaced as well by the previous one. So that was only made 2 months ago, and as Sue Holland has pointed out, the minute was very clear about. This is a chaotic way. If you're now saying, that you've reviewed this, this now makes sense to do this, to amalgamate it with well-being, to eliminate a portfolio holder, why didn't you know this at the AGM when you proposed this, and you had been going through a whole process in terms of setting out your portfolio positions and the amount of portfolio holders? It makes no sense whatsoever. And it seems to me that creates a spectacle of chaos in terms of how you are administering this council from a leader's point of view. I mean, also, I think the residents, may actually begin to wonder, are we actually moving the council into a position of disrepute in terms of the council acting in terms of in a chaotic way? It makes no sense. I've never seen this in a council before. I've had to look at some other examples, and I can't find them actually. This late stage, make this reorganisation. We've got 2 red flags flying on planning, clearly, and yet you do this. It makes no sense whatsoever. And it is the leader's decision.
Councillor Davies, please.
Very well put, Councillor Riley. planning is huge. And I had a very long telephone conversation this morning from a parish council clerk who was asked by the parish council to talk to me and raise their concerns. So we have delays, we have inconsistent approaches to planning from one development to another, which in itself is causing concerns, and it is a major issue for us in Broadland. So we need that stability and consistency. We don't have that consistency at the moment, unfortunately, in terms of dealing with the various applications. And it's actually costing, and I was given some figures, costing developers and parish councils a lot of money. So there is that issue. We need that stability and some consistency. So I'd support the comments there that have been made by Councillor Riley. A separate issue, and it's a question really, and I'm sorry, Leader, but I've got to raise this because I've raised it previously, that you actually haven't declared your interests as in terms of your private consultancy workers in development and planning, when you're actually assigning yourself as the strategic planning policy lead for Greater Norwich Growth Board and the Greater Norwich Development Partnership. And I'm asking whether perhaps you should have done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Laming, then I'll ask the Leader to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd always assumed that any issues of equality, diversity and inclusion would come under the Wellbeing Committee, as it affects the wellbeing of residents as well as staff. But I see in Appendix A that equalities is listed under transformation and organisational development and marked as not being referred to a panel. Are there no issues at all that are related to equality, diversity and inclusion that would need to come before a panel? And if there were any at all, would they be better addressed by the existing wellbeing panel, or if these changes go ahead, the new Communities, Housing and Wellbeing panel?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I do hear what everyone's saying, and I'm very aware that there are difficulties in planning. I just wanted to say that. I've gone into this with my eyes wide open. I know there's a lot of work to do, and I'm prepared to do that on your behalf. Take into account what Councillor Hartley said about, this needs someone's full attention and respect, and I hope I can give that to you. And I'm trying to give you that reassurance now. Any concerns you do have, please come directly to me. Tell me about them, and only that way can I address them, and we can address them within the planning department. I don't know if that's happened before because I've not been in that position, but I would ask you to do that. I want to try to give you the consistency that you're asking for. Okay, I can only get you to judge me on my record in the future. So I mean that's all I can say to you right now. Is yes, I know it's a huge task, but I believe I can do a good job. I've done that already in the portfolio that I currently hold, and I hope I can continue to do so. You're talking about addressing inclusion. That will always be within the community side. When we talk about communities, we talk about inclusion. That's absolutely what we are as Broadland. We are inclusive, and I would always expect that to be addressed within that. I mean, you've sat on the wellbeing panel before, or many of you have, and we talk about the work of the Help Hub. That's very much about the inclusivity of our residents, and that will not disappear from the new panel. Certainly not while I'm here. So that I hope that gives you some reassurance. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Waymark. Can I ask the Leader if he wants to respond to some of the queries that have been raised?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll try and work my way through them as they were raised. So first one in relating to changes for the white paper. The white paper is the white paper. It didn't bring about any changes. The changes will come once that becomes planning policy, And once we know what those policies are, they will then be implemented. So that's a little bit of a red herring. The implementation of the redesign of planning is something that has started following the agreement of council having gone through the relevant panel, cabinet, and then on to council. So now is the right time to do that. I guess elements to part of the reason for the change that I probably didn't want to go into, but Councillor Moncur has requested that he no longer remains as the planning portfolio holder. So the change was coming. Again, I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank him for the work that he's done. Unfortunately for him, work has sort of taken over, and therefore that means he's not able to give it the time that he wants to. So the change is the best way to bring it forward. I felt by splitting off the elements of the portfolio in the ways that I have was the most appropriate way to do that. The issues raised and the nonsense around issues with delivery are inaccurate. Yes, there is red flag on the performance report, but the red flag is our internal measure. That's not against the standard that is expected externally. If measured against that standard externally, then that would be green. So our performance internally is higher than the requirement, but for ourselves, we expect a higher delivery of standard. So I think that's a unfair thing to say. Other elements around inconsistency in planning decisions, again, that is not fair to say that. Each planning application will be dealt with on its merits. If there are elements within a planning application that warrant an approach, then that planning application will have that approach. But there is no precedent set within planning from one application to another. So it should well be that the planning application is determined based solely on that application, and there shouldn't be any inconsistencies shown. Appendix A was mentioned around equalities. The reference there to equalities picks up the internal equalities relating to staff, which is why it sits within that portfolio that was shown. Appendix A is the current state. So these are the ones that need to be reviewed and looked at. So this is where it sits today. So it's not that it's being changed. These are where they are now. So picking up the point that was made, if it was felt that we need to expand on that and put that somewhere else, then that will be picked up through the process. The last one, I think, on the list around my own declaration of interest. If I had to declare or had anything to declare, I would have done it at the beginning of the meeting. There is no declaration to be made, and there is no element to cause conflict within the process of where the delivery of these elements of the different portfolio now sit. So I'm a bit disappointed that that's been raised again, because that's just misrepresenting the situation completely and has previously been addressed within a council meeting. So which brings me back to, I guess, the recommendations which are there before you. So I suggest we move on.
Thank you very much. Do you have any other comments? If not, we can take the recommendations and I'll do them individually up to 6, 7. So can we have a show of hands on, and these recommendations are on actually page 90, 6.1, which is the redistribution of the planning portfolio holder responsibilities as indicated by the leader and outlined on section 2.1 and 2.2 of the report.
Chair,
I'm doing each one separately.
Chair, could I clarify something? A point.
Sorry, yeah, Councillor.
So I believe that what I was proposing, and I think it was okay with you, that we take all the related matters to this proposal in block, and then the other ones separately.
So 6.1 to 6.1, 6.1 to 6.2 in block, and then 6.7 to 6.9 in block.
Yeah. No.
6.1 to 6.6, and then
Yep.
6.7 to 6.9. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I take a show of hands on the proposals, recommendations 6.1 to 6.6 that are on page 90? A show of hands, please.
So, can I, 1, 2, 3, 4. Could you please put your hands clearly? Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, Chairman.
Thank you. And those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, Chairman.
Thank you. That's carried.
Abstentions.
Sorry, abstentions? No. Okay. Can we take then the proposals on page 96.7 through to 6.9, please? Give a show of hands in favour of those. That's carried.
Oh, sorry, I think that's unanimous, Chairman. Apologies.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on. Reports from outside bodies, and I'd like to thank Councillor Shawes and Councillor Leggett for their reports, and remind other members who do represent us on outside bodies to put forward reports so that the rest of the council know exactly what's being discussed. And as can be seen from Councillor Leggett's report on the waste partnership, there's quite a bit of discussion there, and new legislation which they've got to deal with and coming up. So thank you for that, Councillor Leggett. And moving on to questions from members in accordance with Procedure Rule 12.4. Can I ask Councillor Laming first to face a question?
Thank you, Chairman. The rising cost of living is a real worry for a number of residents in Broadland. How can Broadland District Council assist people in low-income households to access fair and reliable lower-cost credit and to obtain advice on financial health?
Can I ask Councillor Weinmark to respond, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Laming, for your question. I think it does give me a good opportunity to actually tell you about the good work that the team is doing on a day-to-day basis. Broadland District Council has got a substantial offer through our Help Hub to support people with debt and welfare issues. We currently have in place 1 welfare rights officer, 2 debt and welfare officers, and 2 financial wellbeing coordinators. So they're located within Help Hub and funded by both councils. We also have a network of community connectors across the district, and they're all trained in budget advice. So they'll go out and speak to people and give them advice around budgeting. You talk about fair credit, and this is a difficult area really, because we're working with the Scams Partnership and trying to help people access reputable sources rather than high interest loans. But obviously, as you can imagine, the more debt people are in, the more difficulties there are, the more difficult it is for them to actually access good credit. So it's an area we're working on, and we're encouraging people to come to us rather than go to loan sharks. And that's really all we can do in that space, really. We're also working with citizen advice. So we're working with them to put some more support in place. And part of that is through the Health and Wellbeing Partnership, where there's some new projects coming on stream to support people. And this will be across, working across with their county colleagues, health colleagues, and also citizen advice. So it's very much about joined up thinking, about working together within the Health and Wellbeing Partnership. So I'm really pleased about that. I'm very encouraged about where we're going, actually, but I'll tell you about that in the future. All right. We're also investigating our own ideas about how we can support people with cost of living crisis. As you know, we've got hardship funds. We're helping people, with that. We've given people energy grant, and we've also got the discretionary grant for people in houses band E to H as well. So that there's enough money there to support 1,000 people who may not otherwise have got any money there. So there's lots and lots of different angles that we're looking at, and we really are looking at more ways to help support people. As I say, we have got a report coming to our policy committee in September. So we will be looking once again at how we can put even more structure in place to support our residents. But it's always about our most vulnerable residents and supporting them as best as we can. I hope that gives you a full answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, that all sounds really positive, and clearly the work of the Help Hub is very, very good. I just wondered whether the council collaborates with or promotes any credit unions or community development finance institutions in the district.
Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, through the debt that we offer, sorry, is it still working? Yeah, we will look at credit unions or any other angle we can, to be frank, any way we can support people. So I would say that those channels are always open. As I say, it is getting more and more difficult for people to get credit, and some people obviously take the wrong, I say the wrong route. It's probably they're in desperation, so they go whatever route they can, you know, and that's truly unfortunate. But yes, all channels are open to help support people, absolutely, and we want to work with all of our partners, and that means all of our partners. And we're doing I think, a very, very good job through the Help Hub, particularly, as you heard from the peer review, but also through the Health and Wellbeing Partnership. We're really reaching out and trying to bring more and more people together so that we can help our most vulnerable residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. 15.2, question from Councillor Kareem McGovern-Lew, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could the finance portfolio holder confirm the cost of the 7 wicker corgis made for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, please? Oh, and the second one as well. Okay. All right. Following on from my first question, could the finance portfolio holder confirm the final cost for the prestigious Party in the Park at Blickling Hall, and how many residents and councillors attended this, please?
Yes, thank you for your question. So first of all, the corgis, we decided to ask a local artist to design for us rather than go to China to supply some sort of statues for us, which would have been cheaper to do, but we felt it was better to go local. So to actually design, actually build and locate the corgis was £20,631.41. What was also discussed at the time, as soon as they were removed, probably the end of September, we are looking at auctioning them. Now, there's already been quite a lot of interest regarding purchasing the corgis. The council can then make the choice at that time whether to put that money back in to our own reserves or whether we would like to donate to charity. We were looking at possibly donating to Break. We tried to join with them and have them actually do our corgis, but they were not willing to let us do that because of their dinosaurs and so on. So that's why we went separately. However, the corgis have actually proved to be so popular and have attracted people to the district, especially the ones that are on the Traveller's Charm Trail. And businesses on the Traveller's Charm Trail have also offered discounts to visitors, and they are seeing much more footfall. So the decision will be made. We're leaving it open whether we decide we'd like to keep the corgis and store them and bring them out at different events, or whether we carry on and auction them, and then, as I said, whether we retain the monies or whether we donate the money to charity. So that will be a decision made. But when we initially decided to have them made, it was with a view to auctioning them. There has been various residents, town and parish councils that have contacted to say, could they possibly buy the corgis? So that may be the route we go with that. With regards to the Blickling event, the total cost of that party was £11,635.80. And to put that in context, almost 75% of that cost was the hire of the screen and the associated sound and lighting. Again, we used a local company to hire that from. And to also say the screen had to be in place for the whole weekend. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but that allowed our team to work with the National Trust to offer a screening of Disney's Encanto on the Friday. Hundreds of people attended that event and raised money to support Ukrainian refugees. So while not only did it provide obviously the event, it also provided monies for the refugees. There were, at the event, there were 9 staff working in the evening, 13 councillors attended, and 2 officers attended. 697 tickets were requested and issued to residents for the event. The weather, as you're probably aware, wasn't kind to us particularly. It did turn cooler on the Saturday compared to the previous days, and therefore 360 people actually attended. Residents had been requested that if they were not going to attend, they should return their tickets, but it was probably last minute because the weather turned cooler. And I think that's answered what you asked me.
Okay, can I ask supplementary?
You're allowed one supplementary.
Thank you. So according to your figures, only 360 residents turned up, which equates to about £31 per head. The total spent for both the corgis and Blickling Hall was £32,266. With the suggestion that I put in quite a few months ago that parish and town councils were supported through this, if we'd given them £200, that would only have cost £10,200. Do you think that spending £32,000 on 360 residents when we have 125,000 residents in Broadland is a good use of taxpayers' money?
Thank you for your supplementary. I would remind you this was a Broadland District Council event. Towns and parishes, as my own town, held a huge event and actually paid for the event at £200 would have not helped that event. It was huge, and I'm sure other towns and parishes did the same. As Broadland District Council, we wanted to recognise the Platinum Jubilee that the likes of will probably never be seen again. We wanted to recognise it. And so I am confident that we've done the right thing. As I said, you're now assuming that the corgis won't be sold, which would then take the costs down again anyway. So we don't actually know the final cost as yet. But I think, as I said, a Broadland District Council event, not for the parishes, they've got their own funding to run their own parties.
I'm sorry, but my council did not have funding for this. And
no,
I'm very happy
you've
that
got-
your council did have funding, but you're a large parish.
Can you stop, please? I thought we've had the member
Sorry, okay.
protocol. Thank you.
Oh, there we are. Thank you, Councillor. I'm afraid you can't come back with a further question. Thank you. What do we do about Councillor Russell?
Just confirm with Councillor Holland whether anyone is taking Councillor Roper's question.
Councillor Holland, can I just confirm that who else may be taking Councillor Roper's question in his absence?
Well, since Councillor Roper is ill, we think it would be best to withdraw his question, and he would like to reserve the right to submit it at a later time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lawrence, your question.
Thank you, Chair. So it's really a nutrient neutrality update, really. Could we please have a status update on what actions have been taken by Broadland District Council to address nutrient neutrality requirements in terms of kind of collaborative actions with other organisations in cooperation with Norfolk County Council and other affected district councils, and thirdly, in planning policy initiatives and like SUDs and assessment procedures for Broadland District Council itself. And specifically, as what aspects in the long-term strategic direction are being considered, and including key expected outcomes, and the process of councillors' input into that strategy development and the expected timeframe, please. If we could give us a sense of that, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Can I ask Councillor Weinmark to respond, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I would do my best to answer this, but there are many parts of it that I don't know yet, because lots of people don't know. What I would say from Broadland District Council, Phil Courtier, Director of Place, has been taking the lead for the whole of Norfolk. All right, so he's been working with the Norfolk Directors Steering Group, which has overseen the response to nutrient neutrality to date. He's also working with other officers, obviously our Assistant Director, Helen Mellors, and Tracy Lincoln. So they've been leading and supporting a county-wide approach to this. Phil continues to work and meet with the directors and also Anglian Water, the Chief Executive of Water Resources East, and he's doing that on a weekly basis to try to establish a collaborative mitigation strategy and a portfolio of mitigation solutions for the entire catchment. Right. Collectively, officers have met and engaged with multiple stakeholders, including leading developer forums, engaging with Norfolk Rivers Trust, Wenston Farmers, Natural England, and Phil has been liaising with the lead civil service at the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities and DEFRA, and has recently offered this area, Norfolk's catchment area, as a pilot moving forward. Strategically, we had a letter from Minister last week, which gave us some suggestions about where we might go in the future. Basically, this will look to reduce the mitigation burden on developers, and the emphasis will be on Natural England to establish a nutrient mitigation scheme. However, officers will work with Natural England to develop this scheme. Members of the Place Shaping Committee, have been briefed at previous meetings, and these briefings will continue in forthcoming months, including updates on timelines. But as I say, so I can't give you any definitive dates when this will happen, but it is in train. It's not just a problem for Broadland, it's for most of Norfolk, and for many other areas within the country. So hopefully that gives you some comfort that we're on top of it, and we're actually leading it. Broadland, we are leading this. So thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question, Councillor?
Yeah, just to, I suppose I didn't see the strategic direction being considered, but I'm just a little bit concerned that we're pushing back onto Natural England, and it would be great to see sort of and understand what are the planning policies the Broadland District Council are proposing to consider and look at, and sort of within this sort of strategic framework. And I don't expect all answers now, because it is a challenging, area. But what would be good is to understand where, to have when is that strategic development going to be, because we have a responsibility and we have an opportunity. Norfolk holds the 12 chalk streams, and we're a very fortunate district council to have two of the most amazing chalk stream bases, and we have a responsibility to ensure that those are the water quality of those are not adversely affected by our planning decisions. So and I don't expect all answers now, but just that framework and a sense of sort of when are we as as a broader council going to be involved in that kind of going forward, rather than just seeing things pushing on to Natural England, which I don't think is particularly, I think there's stuff we can do, and I'd like to see how, what that, where we are in that process. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get further to you, but can I ask the leader to respond to some of that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I'll just pick this up as Councillor Wymark has walked into this one. Yeah, so it's a changing scene, and it has been changing. We received a letter from the Department of Levelling Up and Housing Communities on the 21st of July from the Chief Planning Officer. In that, she set out what was going to happen from government action and what they're going to do. So it's not us that are pushing back on Natural England. Now, what she put in that letter is the fact that the government are planning to make an amendment to the Levelling Up regulation bill in the autumn. And in that is likely to state that there will be a new statutory duty on water and sewage companies in England to upgrade wastewater treatment works to the highest technical achievable limits by 2030 in nutrient neutrality areas. So it's obviously in our area, and that will fall to Anglian Water as our provider. So that's the key element in there and where they're pushing back. There's also requirements in there for Natural England to step up and define and help with some of the work that's going on. Yes, it would be great if we had policies at this point in time, but we don't, and we're still working through those. As I say, Helen is with the team doing that, and Phil is leading for us as Director of Place across Norfolk. So we are very much driving this one forward. What probably is useful is if I share the Chief Planning Officer's letter with all of the members, then you can have a look and see what's in there. But as I say, our own officers are still working through that to see what the impact is likely to be once that amendment comes forward. So further updates will come, but as I say, I'm happy to circulate the letter so that you can see that at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. And on that note, I believe we've come to the end of the meeting. So I'd like to thank you all for staying tonight. Made a change. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.